We've had a lot of negative financial news in the last several weeks, and I think we need to take a step back and go take a look at some bullish developments that are happening right now in Africa in relation to Bitcoin. Let's dive into it. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had an amazing weekend. We are going to dive into this story about Africa bullishness, and it all started with a tweet from @PlebSignalBTC. Awesome low-key Bitcoiner account. I definitely suggest people follow. Anyways, here we go. Bitcoin is poised to blow up Africa's $86 billion banking system. A broken financial system. Moving money in Africa is an expensive and complicated process. Commercial bank branch access is limited, especially for people living in remote and rural areas. Digital banking options are also limited. Tack on rampant hyperinflation, widespread government corruption, capital controls trapping domestic cash in banks, and money can stop making sense altogether. It sounds like they need some freedom money out there. Part of the problem stems from the continent's quasi-colonial payment framework, in which roughly 80% of cross-border payments originating from African banks are processed offshore, mostly in the US or Europe. That translates to higher costs and processing times that are sometimes measured in weeks. Clearly, Europe and the US have zero incentive to fix that. But now that there's Bitcoin, they're going to have no choice because they can't ignore it anymore. Then there's mobile money, which has been around since early 2000s. Think of it like an electric wallet tied to a phone number that does not require a smartphone or data to operate. Users can pay bills and shop with their phone through SMS texting instead of having to rely on traditional banking options. Africa's mobile money transactions rose 39% to more than 700 billion in 2021. Gives you a good clue that using your mobile phone to make financial transfers makes a whole lot of sense out there. World Bank data shows that account ownership at a financial institution or via mobile money service provider has more than doubled in the last decade, rising to 55% of adults in sub-Saharan Africa. Mobile money users don't get the perks of legacy banking, including earning interest on banked savings and building up a credit score based on a history of spending. Interoperability on the continent also remains a major issue with the alternative way of banking. I'm just going to interject. We don't get the perks of legacy banking either anymore. So, I mean, you need to have an insane amount of money to actually get some type of a return on your savings, something that isn't completely embarrassing. The entire banking system in Africa is completely and utterly broken, even amongst the mobile money providers, the telcos. Western Union and MoneyGram offer an expansive physical network of storefronts around the world designed to move money for those who are unbanked. Those cash transfers often incur substantial fees. Yeah, I mean, look, those businesses, they fully understand that they are helping the unbanked bank. And as a result, they pull absolutely massive fees off of those transfers. Bitcoin could eliminate all these intermediaries, allowing citizens to send digital payments directly to one another without relying on credit and without incurring multiple settlement fees along the way. Definitely don't like Bitcoin. If you can get access to the internet, you can settle Bitcoin payments, and the government can't do anything about it. Moving money on the Bitcoin blockchain at its base layer has its own challenges. That's debatable, but anyways. At times of peak demand, fees will often spike higher, and if a user is unwilling to pay a premium for the transaction, they may have to wait for more blocks of transactions to get confirmed before their transfer goes through. The irony of it is that even paying a lower fee and waiting a few blocks still has better transaction finality than the legacy banking system. Anyways, just my own opinion. Bitcoin's Lightning Network helps alleviate both of those problems by slashing the cost of transactions to virtually zero and enabling nearly instantaneous cash payments around the planet, making Bitcoin a more effective payment rail. Yellow Card, first time I've heard of this, by the way. Africa's largest centralized cryptocurrency exchange, run by CEO Chris Maurice, is also looking to embed this layer 2 technology into the platform in order to drive down the price of transactions to virtually zero. Because Lightning offers a universal monetary language, money can travel around the world between any Lightning-enabled Bitcoin wallet. Someone who uses a platform like Block's Cash App, a regulated American financial product with 51 million monthly transacting users, which integrated with the Lightning Network in February 2022, can pay any Lightning invoice in the world instantly. Product lead at Cash App, Miles Sutter, believes that a big part of Bitcoin's utility is how it gets around broken and convoluted payment systems that don't talk to each other. It's an excellent point. Sending cash with Lightning. Bernard Para is a 30-year-old entrepreneur living in Jos, Nigeria, about a 5-hour drive from the capital city of Abuja. He's the CEO of BitNob, and an app that lets users across Africa buy, save, and invest in Bitcoin. BitNob is SMS-based and piggybacks on the mobile money system. Para recently teamed up with Strike, a Lightning Network payments platform, to launch a feature called Send Globally that allows Americans to transfer money to people living in Nigeria, Ghana, and Kenya. We're able to settle into bank accounts or mobile money accounts without the recipients having to interact with Bitcoin themselves. Over time, we've seen that there are still people who really don't understand how to use Bitcoin, who don't care about Bitcoin. What they do care about is their problems getting solved. Incentives matter. The model works because Para and Maulers are willing to take on the liability associated with the transfer for holding cash in escrow on either end of the exchange. Once the money is received in Nigeria, BitNob, which is a regulated entity with connections to the local banks, will take that Bitcoin and turn it into their local currency. It's just two regulated entities communicating over the language of Bitcoin and cutting out excess fees, said Sutter. I think that's revolutionary. Indeed. Indeed it is. I think we're just starting to see the cracks of how the Bitcoin network is actually going to facilitate these institutions and these monetary networks that don't communicate together. And it's something very interesting that I heard way back when I first got into Bitcoin, is that Bitcoin is the TCP/IP of money. That's a very interesting way of putting it, because essentially what TCP/IP does is that it allows everybody to communicate all across the internet. And essentially that is the base layer protocol, or the language that the internet speaks. South African developer Kothatso Ngako, who goes by KG, thank you for making that easier for me, has integrated the Lightning Network into the GSM network, combining the best of a few worlds. And for the people who don't know, a GSM network is a cell phone network. There's many different types of cell phone networks. GSM, if I'm not mistaken, is used predominantly in Europe. Not 100% sure about that. But anyways, at the very least, the 10,000 foot view is that it is a type of cell communication network. Anyways, my focus is giving people without an internet connection the ability to send or receive Bitcoin. KG calls his custodial Lightning wallet Manchankura, South African slang for money. Whereas most Lightning transactions today require a smartphone and data, Ngako's service integrates Lightning via unstructured supplementary service data, or USSD, which is the protocol that mobile money runs on. It is similar to HTTP or Hypertext Transfer Protocol, the protocol on which the web was built. Ngako tells CNBC that he currently has around 3,000 users spread across 8 countries, with a concentration in South Africa, Uganda, Kenya, and Nigeria. Now, I just want to go back. I had mentioned TCP/IP, and of course, this article is mentioning to you HTTP. Okay, so that is a protocol that runs on top of TCP/IP. Okay, so the same way that we'll say that Bitcoin is being built in layers, right? We have the base layer of Bitcoin, and Now we have Lightning Network, which is built on top of Bitcoin. It's the same thing, the same way that the internet is built. There is something called the OSI layers. And essentially, all of these layers provide a different service and that full stack creates what we see as the internet. KG's Manchakura is compatible with any Lightning wallet on the planet. This means that someone with the Cash App in San Francisco, for example, could constantly send Bitcoin via Lightning to the phone number of someone with a data-less basic phone living in a remote part of Uganda. And I think that is absolutely huge. Like I do see, people talking about transferring Bitcoin with ham radio. I know that there's people working on mesh networks using Bitcoin. Like there's the GoTenna people. And I mean, look, these are great solutions, but they're not mainstream solutions, and they're definitely not simple to implement necessarily. Once the user experience gets to the point where it's simple, then yes. But in terms of right now, in terms of developing these infrastructures, it's definitely not cut and dry. I mean, this isn't the kind of thing that somebody who's, not really technical is just going to kind of fall into. All African central banks, except for Central African Republic, have made notices stating that they don't issue Bitcoin and hence they don't regulate it. A Bitcoin transaction cannot be considered a cross-border exchange as Bitcoin transactions aren't regulated within the central bank's institution. Ultimately, Nagako believes that once Manchakura begins to scale, it will be a major driver for Bitcoin adoption across the continent. More and more mass adoption will, in my belief, take away all the oxygen from governments attempting to control behavior through financial oppression. So what do? We build, we build, we build. They can't stop us, and that's what's important. Lots of bullishness. I do obviously want to be objective about it. The custodial... the custodial Lightning wallets, I mean, look, I get that it's so much easier to do. I get that. But the problem is this. Once a human being gets used to doing something, they tend to continue doing it, okay? Life, I know that some people may not want to accept it, but our lives are really ruled by rhythm and patterns and habits, okay? So there's a reason why we're having such a hard time breaking away from the counterparty risk of the banking system, okay? It's because of exactly that. Once we get into a rhythm, it becomes incredibly difficult to break that rhythm. So although I applaud, and I do think this is bullish development, what's going on in Africa, I really would like to see easier non-custodial solutions, right? We're putting all this effort into creating centralized crap. Again, we should be making that same effort into making non-custodial solutions that have an amazing user experience. That needs to be our incentive. The freedom money and the ability to transact freely and the ability for the government or any large institution not to censor us. This is what matters. This is what should be driving us. These should be our incentives. So I get, that the bigger picture, this is what everybody always comes up with the whole net positive for Bitcoin. Oh, well, it's okay that he's making a piece of shit because, it's net positive for Bitcoin. There's so many more people using the network. But it doesn't matter. If it's all custodial and all of this could be shut off, it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Granted, I'm not a coder, okay? So you can just call me a LARP, right? Because I don't actually write any code. I don't actually develop any of these apps. But maybe somebody who codes is listening to my show. And maybe, just maybe, they're going to be like, you know what? He's right. And forget about me being right. But that is the truth, right? The truth is that we need non-custodial solutions and they need to have great user experiences if we want more and more people to adopt Bitcoin and for it to actually matter. Otherwise, we're simply just handing the keys over to the gatekeepers, and we're just doing it in a different way.